One of the best things that you could possibly spend your money on when it comes to monitoring the health of your vehicle at any given moment is a digital multi-gauge of some kind. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you may have heard of a company called P3 gauges. They're the ones that kind of pioneered this, and I've had one of those in my car for a long time. But just recently, a company called CANSensor has released their version of a digital multi-gauge, and it allows you to monitor a lot more at any given time than a P3 gauge. So they have sent me one of their gauges to do a review on. I'm going to show you how I got it into the car. I'm going to show you how it works and give you my overall thoughts on it. And I'm going to tell you whether I like it better than my P3 gauge or not. So if this is something that interests you, stick around and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is remove the vent so that you can get your old vent out. With me, I've got my P3 gauge in there, so it's gonna be a little bit easier for me. If you need a full write-up on how to do this from scratch, you can check out our P3 gauge install video, which I'll link to a card here in the top of the video. And that'll show you step-by-step explicit instructions on how to do this from scratch. But I'm gonna go ahead and start removing all this stuff. This is an 8mm bolt. And a couple more there. And then this will start to come off here. Once you remove that bolt, you can pull this out, and then there is a wiring harness plugged into the bottom here, and it's kind of tricky to get at because there's not a lot of room and it doesn't really have enough slack to pull it way out to get to it, but you can get in there and remove it. As you can see, I've already got my wire ribbon in here from my P3 gauge. So I'm gonna start to undo that. So I've got my P3 gauge removed, so now we can take the vent over to the bench and we can remove the old P3 digital display and install the CANSensor display. So how does the CANSensor setup compare to the P3 gauge? I know a lot of you are going to ask me that, so I figure I'd go over here. I've got all the CANSensor stuff up top there. This is all my P3 gauge stuff here. So just so you know, with this box, this has some analog inputs. This is a 3D printed box. It says CANSensor. It's, you know, very basic. You know, it's not super tight. You can hear the stuff inside moving around, but I'm not worried about that. It's not gonna be banging around the car. But this is the one that allows me to get ethanol content readings if I get an ethanol content analyzer installed in the car, which I do plan on doing at some point. But the other ones won't have the analog inputs, the cheaper version. So I've got that one. Got my OBD2 cord, and it looks just like a normal OBD2 cord. And then got the actual display. This is my P3 display here. You can see the 3 buttons for this one. You can see the 2 on this one. They look almost identical in terms of shape. I mean, and they basically are. You can see the little P3 has their little emblem there. On the back, you can see that the P3 gauge is completely closed off on the back here. It looks like it has a little 3D printed cover, and it's covered with some tape. This one is just open here. And I don't think that's going to be an issue, but at the same time I might get some electrical tape and just cover this up, but I'm not really terribly worried about it. So otherwise they look pretty similar. The P3 gauge has a little bit thicker, heavier duty ribbon wire that they use for this, and this is a ribbon wire, but it's a little bit smaller and thinner. I'm not saying that makes a huge difference, just pointing out differences there. And then I will say this, in this one I have an older version, so it's got the track pack, got this cable. This seems a lot more high quality, I would say, going to the OBD2 port compared to the CANSensor one. But once again, I'm not saying that that means it's going to perform less or it's you know, any worse. It's just this seems like a little bit higher quality of some materials. So, but other than that, they're very similar. I'm going to get this P3 gauge out of the way. And next, I'm gonna go ahead and get my CANSensor digital display installed into my vent and get it all ready to put back into the car. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do, and this is relatively simple, is we're gonna go ahead and install our vent and feed the wires through. So I've got the two pieces disconnected for now because this will make it easier to feed this. I'm just gonna run this line back behind here and pull it out the side. And now this is a tricky part, getting this stupid wiring harness thing connected, because you don't have enough room to bring your hand up from the inside. So you just kind of have to get it started and then hope that your fingers are tiny enough. So sorry if my shoulder gets in the way here. Okay, finally got this stupid clip in. And so I've got this cable fitted through. We can go ahead and get the entire vent assembly pushed in here, but before we get it all connected back together, I'm gonna go ahead and run the wires. Gonna go ahead and get everything put together to make sure it works correctly. So I'm gonna take this, I'm going to, let's see here, I'm actually gonna undo this and run this cable. That'll make life a lot easier as well. And I have this loosened up from the bottom. You don't need to have this loosened up. I just had it for something else. I'm gonna take this cable, I'm just going to run it up here to where you can't really see anything. Get it nice and out of the way. Plug this into the box. Plug this into the box. Let's turn on the car and see if it works. We got it on, so I'm going to tighten this all up and then we'll come back and show you exactly how to set this up and how it works. The way you navigate through your CANSensor is really simple. You have 3 buttons up here that control all of your functions with your CANSensor. To go back and forth between your different menu options, you're just going to use your right button and your center button. So the right button will go forward, your center button will go backwards. And that's a really nice feature, being able to go back and forth, because on the P3 gauge, you can only go forward and you have to cycle through all your options to get back to something. So on the CANSensor, you can just back it up, which is really convenient. I'm happy with that. The CANSensor has 2 different sets of parameters. If you're on the one that's showing you different groups, as in group 1, group 2, then you're on the main set of parameters. In order to access your secondary set of parameters, you're gonna hold your right button down for 2.5 seconds. And once you do, it's going to come up on the clear codes option. That's how you know you're in your secondary set of parameters. And then the same thing here. You use your right and left buttons to navigate through your secondary set of parameters. To go back to the main set of parameters, you're going to hold down the center button for 2.5 seconds, and it will bring back the main menu. Your left button displays your max values. So if you hold it for less than 2.5 seconds, it'll bring up your max values. Let me try and do it here so you can see. And then if you hold it down for longer than 2.5 seconds, it's going to reset the max values that it has recorded. Now, if you're in your secondary set of parameters, you will not record max values from the main set of parameters. So don't do any kind of runs or anything like that you really care about while you're in the secondary set of parameters. Okay, so everything I'm about to go over here is going to be in the instruction manual you receive with your CANSensor. If you wanted to check out that manual before you buy one, just check the description of the video, and I've got a link to the manual that you can peruse and familiarize yourself with before purchasing. So we're going to start off real quick, just showing some stuff here. You can see obviously white numbers here. There's 2 displays. We're going to see some that have 3. You see these LED bars. These are going to be used for other things as we go through each of the options in this menu. So starting off, it says RTD 1 do. That means your cylinder 1 and 2 retard values. Then you can see that you've got 2 sets of numbers here, and basically they're going to come up. Basically, when you press that left button, you're going to show the max values, and if you hold it, which I don't have any, so it's not going to display anything, but if you hold it, it'll reset those max values. You can see it kind of goes off and back on. If you go over to the right, you're going to have cylinder 3 and 4 retard values and cylinder 5 and 6 retard values. After that, you're going to have some low pressure fuel information. So on the left is your fuel regulating valve percentage, and on the right is your low fuel pressure, and it's going to be listed in bar. Next section is going to be your high pressure fuel values. On the left is going to be your specified fuel pressure in bar, and on the right will be your actual fuel pressure. After that is the ignition timing for cylinder 1, just showing your ignition timing adjustment. We're moving to the groups. Group 1, this is going to show you your retards for all cylinders. So think of each zero as a cylinder going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these are going to be listed in integer values that are rounded. So let's say cylinder 1 has a negative 3.75 retard value. It'll round it to 4, so it's just going to display a 4 there. Once again, if you press the left button for less than 2.5 seconds, it'll display the max values, and holding it down for longer than that will reset them. Group number 2, on the left side is going to be your compressor pressure actual and bar, and on the right will be your specified compressor pressure value and bar. And then above that is going to have your cylinder retard values and the LED grid. So it will have 1 through 6, and the ones that have retard values will be highlighted. So if you don't know the compressor pressure value, that is just your boost. So on the left is going to have actual, and on the right is going to be specified. Group 3. This is the one I leave on for my daily driving. It's going to have your IATs, your oil temperature, and your transmission oil temperature. This is a really good group to monitor the health of your vehicle. It is in Celsius, so us North American folks will have to figure out those values that we're so used to in Fahrenheit and know what to look for here. But as a general rule for your IATs, you don't want them to go over 80 degrees. My car is off right now. I've been driving it. That's why it's a little warm. But so yeah, you have those, but the thing here on this group is if you press the left button, it doesn't display the max values for those. It displays your max values for your boost, and it's going to show specified versus actual there. When you are driving on this, the red LED grid as you boost will start to increase, and as you come off boost, it will fall back down to the left. Group number 4. On the left side is your IATs, and on the right side is your exhaust gas temperature. And you can use this to monitor the health of your catalytic converters if you still have those. Just, kind of get a baseline of what exhaust gas temperatures you should be at, and if you see them start to get really hot, you know that there's something in there keeping the heat in there, and that could be indication of a failing catalytic converter. And then the bars on this one is your bypass valve. So it's showing you if your bypass valve is open or closed. Now we're in group number 5, and in group number 5 on the left is your actual compressor pressure value, once again in bar. On the right is going to be, in the center is going to be the position of the bypass valve, and it's rounded to an integer value. And on the right is the ignition angle, and it displays up to 10 degrees, and above that's only an integer. The bars, if they display, are going to show you your cylinder retard values. Group number 6. On the left side is the actual compressor pressure value, once again in bar. On the right is the mass airflow sensor, grams per second, or mass airflow, grams per second. And then the bars are going to show your retard values. Now on mine right now, if I click it again, it goes back to the beginning of the list. But if you have the option to display ethanol content, in the center of that, it'll show your ethanol content, and it'll have the bars for your boost. And then if you get the max option and you go to the next one, which once again, mine doesn't have it, but it's going to have fan control. On fan control, you press the left key to change the speed of the fan. AUT is auto control by the ECU. A1 means that the speed of the fans depends on the speed of the car. So it's 100% when the car speed is 0 to 7 miles an hour. And from 7 miles an hour, it's controlled by the ECU. And then the 100% option is just going to be the max speed of the fans. It's going to be 100% the whole time. When you click it again, if you've got the max option for the CANSensor, you're going to go into your pump control, and that's for your supercharger coolant pump. If you press the left key to change the speed, it's going to go to AUT, which is auto control by the ECU. A1 means the speed of the pump, and that's going to be when the intake temperature is less than 20 degrees Celsius. And when the bypass is open more than 60%, the pump will only operate at 10%. And then when the intake temperature is more than 20 degrees Celsius and the RPM is less than 3,000 RPMs, the pump works at 33.5%. And then when the RPM is more than 3,000 and the bypass is closed by less than 60%, the pump returns on at 100% and works for another 10 seconds after the RPMs drop or the bypass opens. And then 100% just means the pump is on full blast. Okay, now let's talk about our secondary set of parameters. The first one you're going to come up with is your clear codes option. So once you're here, you just press the left button and it will clear all of your DTCs. That's pretty much it for that option. Once you move on to that, you have, it says cool MIS. On the left side is the coolant temperature, and on the right side is a sum of misfires that you might have. So if you think you're misfiring, this might be a good one to monitor, and it'll show you how many you get. Once then you go to the next option, it says short, and that's your short-term adaptation. Long stands for long-term adaptation. When you get here, it says launch C, and then it switches over, it says no limit here. So launch counter, and this is only for the DL501 gearbox, which is DSG. This isn't for ZF, so this will be for, I would say, you know, your S6s, S7s. If you have DSG, you'll be able to use this to look at your launch counter. After that, it says ANI, and this is turn on and off automation in the menu. So you press the left click button to turn it on. I don't even know what that does, but I'm going to turn it on and see what it does. SND, this is only on vehicles that come with the ethanol content option, and it's a buzzer for the retards if they are more than 3 degrees. So if you click the left button, it'll turn that on. So there should be a little alarm if you get anything over 3 degrees of a retard value. And then the last option here is brightness, and this is going to control your display brightness. So let me go back here. You use the left click button here to, I'll get up here, to change your brightness, and this just cycles through. I have found that I just keep mine on brightness number 1, and that works for me all day long and all night long. The P3 gauge, you were able to hold a button and it would swap back and forth between bright and dark. This doesn't have that option. You have to go into the secondary set of parameters to adjust it, which might be kind of a pain if you like to adjust it from day to night settings. But what I found is with 7 options, you can find a setting that works all day long for you. I keep mine on number 1 and it works great. Once again, to come out of this, we hold the center button and it will move back to the regular display. And then it looks like that animation just means the things pop up and then they move left off the screen. So a little fanciness there. I'm going to get back to my group 3. Oh, I will say the animation makes it take a little bit longer to cycle through your groups because you can't cancel the animation. Final thoughts. What do I think about the CANSensor? How does it compare to my P3 gauge that I've been running for about the past 3 years? First, let's talk about the price. The CANSensor, there's 3 options, and one of them is $200 plus shipping, one of them is $250 plus shipping, and one of them is $500 plus shipping. The $200 version gets you everything except for analog inputs, so that means you can't run ethanol control or ethanol content display on it, and you can't do the fan and the pump control. Then you get an option that you can get the analog inputs, and that'll allow you to display ethanol content if you have the analyzer and whatnot. You can wire that up, but you don't get the fan and pump control. And then the max value one, the one that's $500, that's the one that you can do some wiring and you can control your fans and your coolant pump for your supercharger loop. So you just got to figure out which one you want. But for $200 plus shipping, to be able to display IATs, oil temperature, trans fluid temperature, clear your DTCs, do everything that we just went over, that is amazing. That's such a great value for what you get. And then even for the ethanol content one, $250, and you run your analyzer, you get your own analyzer and everything, but $250 plus shipping to be able to have this gauge and display ethanol content, that's fantastic. And then the $500 version, and you have to do some custom wiring for that one. It's not just a plug and play, and the manual shows you how to wire that. But being able to control your fans and pumps, I think that's really killer. That's awesome for everything to come in one package and be able to do that. Now, compared to my P3 gauge, I've got the version 2 P3 gauge. That's what I was running for the past 3 years, and I had the track pack. So I had the 0 to 60 timer, 0 to 100, 60 to 100, 30, I think, the braking timer, all that stuff. And those were fun, but they weren't perfectly accurate, not like a draggy system is. So I don't think I'm going to really miss those. I haven't missed them so far since I've been running the CANSensor, and I've had it for about 2 weeks now. Given what I can do with this compared to that version of my P3 gauge, the CANSensor wins all day long, hands down. Having said that, I have heard that P3 is coming out with a V4, version 4 of their product, and it's been rumored that it will display multiple values at once. So it sounds like they are updating their product to compete with CANSensor. But as far as right now, this thing is fantastic, and it does beat the value that you get in terms of this versus a P3 gauge. Now, please don't take me, what I'm saying is, you know, talking badly about P3. Those guys are amazing. And I think there's only 3 or 4 people that work for that company. They are a small company as well, and they innovated this. They were the ones that did this first and set the way for, you know, companies like CANSensor to come along and work on it as well. They're a great company. CANSensor has come out with a killer product as well. You know, I think this is the first competition that P3 has actually had. So it'll be interesting to see how these two develop going forward between each other. But can't go wrong with this. Once again, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. And one more thing that I almost forgot about. The other thing that CANSensor can do is update via Wi-Fi. You can get firmware updates. So if they have updates that they might change some things, they can send that file to you and you can connect to Wi-Fi and update this. And I will have a separate video showing how to update the CANSensor via Wi-Fi for those of you that are interested. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you for tuning into another video. Like and subscribe if you don't mind. It helps out the channel a lot. And I will see you guys on the next video.